What's up, everybody? Tim Anderson here, aka Renfell, the bearded dwarven princess. I just got done watching the first episode, and we're going to be reviewing that first episode in this video. I'm not doing the whole premiere, I'm just doing the first episode. We're going to break these down into individual episodes as we move through the series. So this is only going to be covering the first one. I have a lot of thoughts. Yeah, bear with me because a lot of what I thought was going to take place did. We definitely have some major changes from the lore that Tolkien himself wrote. We also have an amazing score by Bear McCreary and, of course, Howard Shore's music. Visually, this show is just on every level. This is a spectacle worthy of the biggest blockbusters out there. I mean, they have put a ton of money into this show, and it shows, no pun intended. However, the writing and the plot and the changes to storyline, there's a lot we got to discuss in today's episode. I am going to save the review part of this for the very end, so hopefully you'll stick around till then. We're going to get going. But before we do, shout out to all of our supporters here on YouTube, members of the Adventurers Guild, as well as supporters over at the Patreon page for what we're building with the World of the Weave and the Void. Everybody who tunes in to the live streams every single morning, every single evening as I play MMORPGs and everything else, and drops super thanks, super chats, and stickers on these videos to support me as a full-time content creator. Thanks to you, I get to do this full-time and create videos like this. So don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon to continue to get Rings of Power updates, as well as wait to the end of the video to find out more about how you too can become a supporter. So I got my show notes here, and we're going to be going through because there's a lot to cover. This may be a little bit of a longer episode. I'm not sure quite how long, but I do want to just discuss as we go along, and there is a lot. A lot. So let me move this over here so that I can get my show notes up and let's just dive in. So we kind of get started off here in the realm of the elves, right? And we see Galadriel as a young elf, and we learn right away that elves are just as douchey as humans, and they participate in bullying just as readily as humans do, which was kind of amusing. Uh, but we see a young Galadriel making a little boat and sailing down, and there's all this stuff happening with the other kids kind of bullying her and everything else. And the theme here is that as she builds this boat and her friends sink it, her brother takes her aside and gives her this great speech about how ships are looking towards grander things than darkness ever knows. And the writing is just the acting isn't the problem here. The acting actually throughout the show, the acting was pretty good, but the writing, they're reaching, they're trying really hard trying to find the same tone as Tolkien did in his writings. And sometimes they there's some inklings of stuff here, but a lot of the times it just falls flat. Like this line, sometimes the lights shine just as brightly in the sky as in the waters below. How will I know which one to follow? And we're getting some foreshadowing here. And when her brother leans down and whispers to her, and you don't get to hear the whisper, this is the cliches are hitting hard and fast right out the gate, where we are getting these foreshadowings and these story cliches from other fantasy genre shows that we've seen over the years, because you know that that whisper is going to come back sometime later in the show. We don't know exactly when, but it's going to come back. I will say though, here visually again, the VFX are amazing. So being able to see Valinor and the trees was really freaking epic. As was the introduction to Morgoth, even though we really didn't get to see Morgoth. We just sort of this war is mentioned and how he destroyed the trees, but that's not entirely correct because he didn't actually destroy them, at least not on his own. It was actually Melkor with Ungoliant who drained the life from the trees, and from a technical perspective, it was Ungoliant herself who destroyed the trees. But that's splitting hairs, I know, but for a lore person like me, it would have been nice if they at least mentioned that. The battle scene that we see here in the beginning where her brother is out there fighting is really freaking epic and it looks amazing. Visually, again, stunning. There's a dragon throwing down an eagle. The fight scene in its totality is really cool, but this is where we start to veer into the absolute bullshit territory because we get this thing where her we get this speech about how her brother then spends all these years searching out Sauron, making it his personal quest to rid the world of him, but Sauron sought her brother out and killed him before he could kill him. And then Sauron is supposedly marking his targets with this strange symbol that even the wisest could not discern. What the ever loving hell are we going on about here? Symbol? Like Sauron has a symbol that he's marking his targets with, and that's why her brother died. And what about her other brothers? She's reduced to only one brother here. Like we've taken this amazing lineage and the storylines that happened throughout the wars in the First Age, and we've just reduced them to she had a brother, he had a personal quest to kill Sauron. Sauron killed her brother first, and now she's got a quest for vengeance. She's going to take her brother's blade and seek out Sauron. This is where, for me, as a individual who appreciates the books and I love the lore of the books and I love what Tolkien wrote. This is where, and again, this is a thing where it's not necessarily contradicting the existing lore, and that's sort of what's at stake here is the Tolkien estate now under the guidance of someone who's going to let things like this slide because it's not technically, I mean, stripping it down and saying she only has one brother as opposed to several brothers, that's not that big of a deal in the grand scope of things. The quest for vengeance thing I kind of think is BS, but it is what it is. We knew it was coming. But then this thing about how in the darkness his vow became mine to hunt down and kill Sauron. This is another area where just it blows because for me they've just retconned the entirety of Galadriel here, which we knew was coming from the trailers that we've seen. We suspected this, but now we got it finally, confirmed for fact that they've retconned Galadriel from being, she participated in the wars, but she was not a warrior, and now she becomes this, I'm on a quest for vengeance. I'm going to hunt to the ends of the earth. Centuries of hunting Sauron we get. And then we see them on the ice wall. And again, amazing visuals as they're searching for Sauron over the centuries. And there's this, just get the malarkey of more and more of our kind began to believe that Sauron was nothing more than a memory and the threat was ended. I wish I could be one of them. Ugh! The writing is so bad. Just, okay. Her soldiers are questioning her as they reach this ice fortress. How long can living flesh endure where even sunlight fears to tread? And that's exactly the point. This is where evil lives, dude. Just, um, I do have to back out here and talk once again, visually, the cinematography here, top notch, so polished. The light grading, the VFX, even the costumes, which we kind of suspected looked a little cheap in some of the screenshots and some of the some of the photography they took. In the show, everything looks pretty good. It's pretty nice here. But then we're back into this scene where I'm taken out of again because they're in these caves and they're looking for, you know, hints of Sauron. And she's been on the road for hundreds of years, and this has got to be where he is because this is this last northern fortress. And as they're in here, we get the snow troll, which starts decimating her team. And then there's this moment where one of her captains turns around and throws his sword down on the ground, and she runs up the sword, and then he like raises his arm and like catapults her into the snow troll with the sword. And I'm just like, I called out Legolas in Helm's Deep and the Oliphant, like that kind of stuff, and in The Hobbit, particularly, he's jumping up the crumbling ruins as they're falling. That kind of stuff just takes me out. And this scene here where Galadriel single-handedly takes out a snow troll that is decimating half her team, I just had to just be like, cringe, 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 cringe. She wants to continue on. They see the symbol here, and she's like, Sauron was here. He's left this symbol for his orcs to follow. We have to find out where this symbol leads. The orcs are going to regather. He's gathering strength. I just know it. But the crew mutinies. They literally all lay down their weapons and say, we're not going to follow you any further. And I thought that she was going to go on by herself. It turns out she's not, which we'll get to here in a minute. We get going here now to the Harfoots, and I will say I like the transition from the maps to the scenes. I think that's a very well done from a visual standpoint. So again, I'm giving credit where credit is due. Visually, the show looks good. Um, we get this scene of these two hunters. Previously, we weren't sure what they were, but it appears they're just hunters with these giant like moose horns that they're taking back to town. Um, Interesting. And there's just bantering about, oh, what was that behind us? It must be a fox. No, it might be one of them Harfoots, them dangerous creatures. And then we get this whole scene of the Harfoot village, which is beautiful, breathtaking. Um, but here's the problem. The dude, the main like, what is his name? I've got to scroll down. It's the character that Lenny's playing, Sadok, the Harfoot sage. He's reading a book and he's like, travelers at this time of year, it's an omen, I warrant ya. But Tolkien himself says in Lord of the Rings that hobbits avoid record keeping as a general rule. It literally says in Lord of the Rings that they only began writing records after the settlement of the Shire, and then mostly only for genealogy. But yet he's got this book with like star charts and all this other stuff in it, and he's like looking at the travelers going, "I shouldn't be here this time of year. Something's going on. Remember that last time when the travelers were here and we had the frost air? You know, the frosts came." I don't know. Rebellious hobbit child Nori, another cliche, picking blackberries, and oh my god, there's a wolf, but we get a slight visual here. It's definitely a warg. Flash forward, now we're meeting Elrond, and he's writing a book, and some elves show up and tell him, "You're not allowed to attend the upcoming council because only elf lords," and he just kind of smirks because he's half elf. So we're getting the sense that there's definitely racism amongst the elves because he's not allowed to attend the meeting, but who cares? Sweeping shots of Linden, and man, this place looks amazing. Um, he gets told that Galadriel's back, and she came back with her men. Then, so obviously, she returned with her crew. And this is where we get the sense that she's got all these titles, commander of the northern armies, and all of this other stuff. And she's giving this speech to Elrond about how this mark proves Sauron escaped, but I'm back now. I'm going to ask the king for more men. And this is where Elrond gives her a warning. He's like, "Look, your path of vengeance is going to get you in trouble with the king because you've exceeded your limits. You've been out there for centuries now, hunting down the evil, and the king's not happy with this. He's going to have a ceremony. You're going to be rewarded for your efforts, as opposed to punished for your insolence. But you've pushed the boundaries too far. You need to stop this pursuit." So we definitely get some foreshadowing that she's, you know, gone off the rails here in terms of a personal quest for vengeance. Uh, Flashback to the hobbits. Nori is giving this speech about, "I can't help but feel there are wonders in the world beyond our simple life in the forest." Cliches after cliches after cliches. And then there's like this scene of like her dad in the background going, "A wheel is supposed to be round." And it's like, so her dad invented the wheel? Like, I don't know. Um, we now get this other scene, and it's Gilgalad um, giving the crowns, and basically he's awarding the warriors of Galadriel and Galadriel herself for their years of service, their years of being in the field hunting down Sauron. And with this scene, with this award ceremony, he's announcing that the war is officially over. He's declared the war is over. He's giving them their awards, and it's, he's giving them all their crowns. And as he gets to Galadriel, he pauses and he's looking at her very sternly, like, "You better accept this. You better take this." Um, and as he gives it, she does accept it. And then he gives this speech about how, "And a reward for your service, I'm sending you all to the Grey Havens to retire and return. You can return home to Valinor," which pisses Galadriel off. And afterwards, she tells Elrond that she's going to deny the gift and refuse the order and seek out Sauron, even if she has to do it on her own. And Elrond gives her. They're having this back and forth, and they're kind of bickering here. And she's telling Elrond that, you know, "You don't know what it is. You've not seen the evil I've seen." And he's like, "Look, we don't feel the evil that you sense." And she's basically telling him, "You're wrong." And he's telling her, "No, you're wrong." All of this Sauron is coming back, as I recall, was Gilgalad in the books, and it wasn't Galadriel. So they've definitely done this and given her this cross to bear, because they need her to be this strong, independent woman. Again, no sign of Celeborn in any of this, and the time period that this is supposed to be taking place in, which is the Second Age, like, she's supposed to be with Celeborn. I digress. Um, time for more invented characters because now we're meeting Arondir the sheriff and his human lover Bronwyn. Um, so apparently this human village, is under elven rule. And Arondir's like the local sheriff, and he comes into the tavern, and there are whispers of poisoning, and the humans all shut up about it. But he heard them, and he wants to know more. Um, One of the tavern kids gets all unhappy about the knife ears, and he gives this speech about how one day our true king's going to return and pry us all out from underneath your boot. Again, cliched stuff here. Some of the humans feel like the elves are lording over them, and this does get played out. Basically later on, we learn that the reason that the elves have been here for the last however many years they've been here since Morgoth was thrown down is because they all allied with Morgoth, and the elves don't trust them basically, and so they got these watch posts set up to keep an eye out for, you know, Sauron and orcs and everything else. But it's been so long, you know. And generations of humans have passed, but the elves keep an eye out because they can't trust the humans. It is what it is. Um, just this whole thing about oh my god, it's a hidden romance, it's so forbidden, yet everyone suspects it, like the tavern keeper and all the people in town. And then as they're leaving town, Arondir's elven buddy gives him a speech about how this has only happened twice in the history of our people, and each time it's ended in tragedy and death, which I will give them credit for. At the very least, at the very least, they have addressed the rareness of a human and elf mating, in the sense that it's only happened twice. Um, so at least I give them that. And as they're discussing this, they get the order that the war has been officially declared over, the outposts are being abandoned and disbanded, and they're going to be returning home, which means he's going to have to leave his lady love behind. And there is this scene here where he goes and meets his watch warden, and the watch warden is very much against humans and reminds him that they've been watching over the people not because of what they once did, but because of what they are, which is human beings easily corrupted by Morgoth and his ilk. Very interesting. Um, we're back to Bronwyn's um, house here, and we meet her son for the first time, and Arondir has showed up, and there's a little speech outside because he knows he has to leave, and he's like, they're probably searching for me even now, but I had to come back and tell you. And she's like, tell me what? And he says, I've told you 100 times already, though never in words. Oh my god, the writing. And then as this is happening, there's a man that shows up with a sick cow. Arondir suspects poisoning based on what he's heard from the tavern, and then he checks the udder of the cow, and black bile comes out. So he has to go looking for the poisoning now, and of course Bronwyn has to follow him. Um, and then as they're off, we get the kid, her son. Is it Theo? Theon. Um, he's with the kid from the tavern. They're in somebody's farmhouse. They're looking for something underneath the floorboards of the farm, and they find this broken sword with the mark of Sauron on it. And as he grasps the blade, we get visions of Sauron in the Black Speech, or visions of something. And is the kid having the visions, or are we just getting premonitions because that's the sword, or is he having the visions because he picked up the sword? I don't really know what's going on here with that. Then boom, we're on the boat. Galadriel is sailing to Valinor with her crew. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff happens in kind of a flash forward rapid fire sequence here. Gil-galad's giving a speech, um, talking to Elrond, that he had a vision that the reason he sent her away and sent her back to Valinor is because the very evil that she sought to defeat could have been kept alive if she was allowed to continue her quest for vengeance, because she had basically permitted herself to become corrupted. Um, and Elrond says, but does that not mean that you think that the threat could still be out there? And Gil-galad doesn't really answer it, but his omission of answer is basically admitting that, yeah, she might have been right about the threat, but it's so remote that he's not really concerned about it. And he then gives his new marching orders to Elrond, tells him that he's going to be working with Lord Celebrimbor on this brand new project. We meet Celebrimbor briefly. There's a smile shared between the two. Then we're back to Sadak the Harefoot Sage looking up at star charts in the sky, doing things the hobbits didn't do according to Tolkien. But yet he is suddenly this wise person who knows all about the cycles, and he's like, "There's something wrong with the sky, and I'm telling you, there's something going down." We get this scene where Arondir and Bronwyn are arriving and they find this village of Horden burns. So definitely something's happening here. And then back to the ships. The elves are preparing to cross over to Valinor. This is all a beautiful sequence. Armor's being taken off of them. We see birds, epic music. They're taking off their armor. She won't give up her dagger. She finally does. All the elves start singing the song of Valinor. Heaven is right there. The clouds part. The lights, the ecstasy. They can see the shores. And then she starts hearing her brother's voice from the past as she looks at the blade. Then we see the comet falling down, and as the comet is shooting across the sky of all the people looking up, wondering what this comet is, she begins to back away from the hands that are being outstretched to her. And she hears the whisper that her brother gave her in the beginning of the episode that sometimes you can't know what light is until you've touched the darkness. And she freaking jumps from the boat with her brother's blade hundreds of miles from anywhere. What? What? And as this happens, there's a leaf that falls in the elven forest in Lindon. Gil-galad picks it up. It has black corruption all around it. We hear the black speech, and now he's worried. We see hobbit feet running up to the crater, and there's Nori, the little hobbit who's so curious, and there's a naked stranger in the comet pit, a bearded dude, and music, and scene. I don't know. This is one of those things where there's a lot going on. There's a lot of invented stuff here. I already talked to Chris about it. Chris has not watched the episode yet, but I know my wife. I know what she likes. And I will let everybody know after she's watched this episode what she thinks. But I guarantee you that she's going to watch this and she's going to see this and she's going to say that she's going to love this. I guarantee you she's going to love this. Visually, it looks good. It has great pacing. Um, there is a lot going on, but it's the pacing is good. Now, I, as a Tolkien fan, have major issues with what they've done to the storyline here. But I did say, and everyone needs to remember this because I have said throughout the entirety of my rant videos that I would give credit where credit was due when I watched the episodes. And I am going to give credit where credit is due right now. Was this a bad episode? Not really. If I didn't have any knowledge of Tolkien whatsoever and I was watching this purely for the sake of this being a fantasy show, this is pretty damn good. It has great visual effects. It has very good cinematography, great lighting. We get a threat from the past, an overshadowing of evil. We get a hint of different characters, some introduction to things. It's definitely, breadcrumbing a lot of things that are going to be playing out over the course of the episode. So from a storytelling standpoint, from a television standpoint, this was fairly good television, and I guarantee you my wife's probably going to give this like an 8 or 9 out of 10 when she watches it. I can't though because of the story issues that I have with this. I don't like what they did with Galadriel at all. They've completely retconned her character so that she can be this strong female warrior when she never was. And that's the part that I don't like because that's not who she is. It's not who she was. I do like the fact that they addressed the rarity of the elf and human relationships and how it's only happened twice, which I'm assuming is for Elrond's parents, and then uh, Luthien Baratheon. Luthien Baron. So at least they've acknowledged that in the text. So I got to give them credit for that because they did at least acknowledge that it's a rare thing and it's not just an everyday occurrence. So that was very good on them in my mind. It's the whole symbol, Sauron's symbol. What the fuck? Like, I'm not on board with that. I think it's cliched that we even need that, and it's being left behind for the orcs to follow. And I don't. There's a lot of made up stuff and invented stuff that just kind of. I'm not a book purist, remember, but what I do want in my adaptations is some sort of actual accuracy according to the source material. And what we have here is a lot of invented stuff. There is a core component to the storyline. There was a great battle. Morgoth the Great Evil. The elves went to war against him. He was defeated, but his lieutenant Sauron was never fully defeated, and she's got this thirst for vengeance, which isn't in the books at all. A lot of invented and made up stuff. But again, visually it looked great, and I feel that there's a core of good storytelling here. So if I can strip all of that away and say that if I can take away my bias for a minute, um, it's not that bad. But with my bias, I would have to give this like a 6 out of 10 for the first episode. And I know some people are going to say, how could you give it more than a 2? Because there's a lot of good stuff going on here. There's a lot of good stuff going on here. I think the writing is fairly atrocious in some places. I think that the acting is Elrond in particular. I like his acting. Like he did pretty good. Galadriel, I feel like the actress who plays her is a little over the top in places. Gilgalad, okay. Um, the Harfoot's a little over the top, but I think the guy playing Elrond is doing a very good job in my mind. Uh, so I mean, the acting is not too bad for me. The writing is good in places, bad in other places. It reaches too far. It tries to be too Tolkien-esque, but at the same time, it does okay in some places. So overall, like I said, I think 6 out of 10 for me. We'll see how the overall show goes as we get deeper into it. Visually, it looks amazing. The music is amazing. The cinematography is great. I felt the flow of scenes was pretty good. We get a lot of, like I said, a lot of storyline teasing as we ease into the rest of the story here. Um, so I have to give credit where credit's due. So at the end of the day, yeah, that's my take on episode 1 of the Rings of Power. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, drop your comments below. Let me know what you thought about the episode, and stay tuned because I will be reviewing the second episode coming up soon. Until next time, stay safe, everybody. Happy watching.